Okay, so really good block there. Aaron, I must say, especially I thought that your answers on topicality were really, really exceptional. Uh, so, especially with as complicated a position as that really is. And so, both of you did a really good job, but I wanted to specifically say that to you, Aaron. And hopefully the volume here is not too echoey. I apologize. I'm in a basement right now. So, I'm going to do the 1AR. And then as soon as I'm finished filming this, I will do the 1 in C against STEM. And so hopefully you can have some time to do both of those things. Okay? So the order is going to be topicality, then the food security advantage, which is contention 2, the academic advantage, which is contention 3, the state counterplan, the spending decide, and then normalization. Okay? And go. On topicality, they make the argument that it has to be in classes, but my argument here is specifically that you look at our Federal Register evidence. It says that a lot of times the school lunches do include information about education in the classroom. They actually talk about what the lunches involve, which means that it involves discussions, it involves things like classrooms, which means that we meet their interpretation. Next, they say that theirs is better, but I want you to extend my Tang evidence. This is a better interpretation for a couple of reasons. Specifically, it means that they could do anything under the negatives interpretation that would allow anything that has anything to do with education in the classroom. We say specifically that it has to be administered through the Department of Education. This is important because their interpretation would allow all kinds of crazy things to the negative. For example, the affirmative could advocate things like teach classes about different types of cameras and claim advantages based on the camera industry, or they could have affirmatives that say, we'll just talk about evaluating the sleeping patterns of butterflies and claim advantages based on restfulness and meditation being good. Both of those would be fair interpretations under the negatives interpretation, but they wouldn't meet ours. That means you extend my number 3 subpoint C, that it's a bright line issue, that all you have to do to determine whether or not the affirmative plan is topical is see if it's administered under the Department of Education or through some other administrative agency. Our argument is that since food is one of the very few things that is actually administered through the Department of Education, that it's topical and that's a bright line. You can do it objectively. And also, I want you to extend my number 4 argument that there's no abuse. There's literally no argument that we try to wiggle out of. And finally, my number 6, it says we are reasonably topical. If you think that we're topical enough, you vote for us. Let's go to food security. They say that school lunches don't get eaten, but they don't answer the fact that this is simply a math issue. Remember, I talked about the fact that 5% of 100 lunches is a lot less waste than 5% of 1,000 lunches, which means that it's actually a math issue, not a solvency issue. They also say that it causes loss, but all of that loss that's happening is actually only happening under the current system. It's not happening if the federal government continues to pay. They say that poverty can't be solved, but extend my McSilver Research Institute evidence. It's really good. It talks about how food is actually the key issue, and then it creates a cycle of poverty. So even if we don't solve it 100%, we solve it better. And they say that it won't lead to adult good choices, but remember that even if that's true, our argument is that brain development doesn't happen if you do the current system, that brain development specifically happens at certain ages, that even if they don't develop that into adulthood, it's still good to do it as a young child. Let's go to the academic advantage. We tell you that it improves academics. They say they don't eat lunches, but I answer that on the other flow. Also, our evidence says they will eat better. That's our Anderson evidence. And even if they don't eat all of it, they eat some of it, which means that we solve better than the status quo. Let's go to the counterplan. They say the counterplan solves 100% of the case and avoids this climate change argument, but my argument is that the permutation would actually solve this. Their Gassman evidence actually talks about how the states and the federal governments work together to solve climate change, and I want you to remember that the permutation would actually allow this. They say, I want you to extend the perm. We say do both. They say that it means that nothing happens, but group all of their perm evidence together. I've got a couple of arguments. First of all, the Gassman evidence that they read about climate change above actually says that they can work together. They did it on climate change. They can do it on education, and also when they say that it leads to innovation in the current system, remember that innovation is actually part of my 50 fiat bad argument, that if you have each of the states do something completely different, it's actually problematic. And also, all of their arguments are about the status quo. They are not about the world of the counterplan, nor are they about the world of the permutation. Remember that when the federal government funds things like education, specifically through things like school lunches, that the states don't have the same problems, which means that they will get plenty of funding. There's not going to be any problem. Also, I want you to extend the Schilling evidence. This is my number 2 that talks about how the USDA is actually critical. It's actually really important here. It has to have the mandates, otherwise the states do all kinds of wonky things, which means that they're never going to be able to solve, and we have to have the same kind of thing. I'm not going to go for the abuse issue on the 50 state fiat bad argument, but I do want you to remember that the states will never be able to effectively solve without the USDA. Let's go to spending. They say that government spending turns the bad incentives, but our argument here is that this is not about food, it's about textbooks, and that's actually not the problem because the plan's going to solve it anyway, because the schools are always going to have enough money, even if it's really expensive. The affirmative plan makes sure that they have that money. They say economic decline hurts schools. That's neat, but irrelevant. Our argument is that we give them the money, so even if it hurts the schools, they're just going to get reimbursed for it. But I also want you to extend the Jing and 9 evidence that says that long term will solve the economy because people have better academics, and the short term, which says that right now a recession is coming, but the Aziz evidence, which says that it almost immediately boosts the economy. That's actually critical. They don't answer this at all. They say the economy could collapse for a lot of reasons. So I say that they say that we should prevent it. Remember, the only way to prevent it is going to be with the affirmative team. Let's go to normalization. I'll concede the fact that Trump is wacko crazy, but this argument is actually really important. It means that nothing that we do can or can't change it, which means that Trump is bananas, that's crazy, that's no matter what happens, he's going to be seen as crazy, that non-unique to disadvantage. Also, I want you to extend the Waxman evidence that talks about how democracy is dead. This means that there's no impact. Even if we hurt democracy, it's irrelevant because democracy has already collapsed completely. And the only way to absolutely have any chance at all about that is the Adler evidence that talks about how it would lead to a strong leader. And I'll agree with the fact that I contradicted myself, but that just means he's wacko and there's no break.